My guest tonight, a professor at the Harvard Law School there, also a legal scholar. His new book is called Wiser, Getting Beyond Groupthink to Make Groups Smarter. Please welcome to the program, Sunstein. Sir! Young man, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
My first question is this. This is blurry, right? It's supposed to be blurry.
Yeah, that's intentional. So you focus.
Oh, thank God. All right, because I thought, okay, I am old, but I'm not that old. Groupthink. Now, you've worked a lot on government regulation, on smarter government. Groupthink is a separate entity, a separate issue from that. But you have this fascinating study in here about these groups in Colorado, one in Boulder, one in Colorado Springs.
Right. What happened was we got a bunch of liberals in Boulder to talk about climate change, same-sex relations, and affirmative action.
Yes.
Just the liberals together. And we had them talk to each other. And as they talked, they got more and more to the left. We did the same thing in Colorado Springs. We got conservatives, people who tend to like Vice President Cheney,
yes,
together to talk about exactly the same issues. And as they talked, they got more and more to the right. So what happened is before the like-minded...
How do you get more to the right of Dick Cheney?
Well, we didn't ask them, are you to the right of Dick Cheney? We asked them, what do you think of climate change?
I see.
That same-sex marriage. And what happened was, before they started to talk in groups of like-minded types,
yes,
they could deal, they could talk to each other. But when the Colorado Springs people talked only to the Colorado Springs people, and when the Boulder people talked only to the Boulder people, then it was as if they were living in two different countries.
And how, so when you put these ideological groups, when they first got together, they were not stridently ideological, they were not dogmatic, but they became that way.
That's right, they were diverse. So just like in any town that tends conservative or that tends liberal, you have some people who are far right, some people who are far left. They won't all be extreme. What happened was a short discussion of these three issues with each other made the conservatives much more conservative, made the liberals much more liberal.
So is the lesson here to not have Congress caucus with each other?
I think that'd probably be a little too strong, but I think it is a good idea for people who are talking just to like-minded others to think to themselves, the information we're getting from each other maybe isn't the full universe of information there is. So if you get stirred up that climate change is a hoax, or that some group of people is terrible because they don't have the right religion or something,
right,
it may well be that what's happening is that there's a little echo chamber.
Is it that they all go to the right of the most ideological individual of the group? Does it only work that way if there is someone in the group that is a tent post dogmatic individual that drives people over there, or no matter what, it goes in that direction?
There's some variety, and they don't always go to the most extreme. It's just that the median after they talk to each other is more extreme than the median before they talk to each other.
Does this work with anything? Does this work with religion? If you put 5 Reformed Jews in a room, do they come out with payas? Like how does that, how does that work? And how do you mitigate that? I guess they would call that epistemic closure.
Yeah. So, we haven't done it with in the case you're describing, so I don't know the result of that one.
You can say the word Jew. It's not
but yeah, it is the case that this is a regularity. It's been found in a dozen countries or more. It happens among people in France who are suspicious of the United States. After they talk to each other, they get a lot more suspicious. People are outraged about behavior in the workforce. If they talk to each other, they get more outraged. The best way to stop it from happening, by the way, is either to use data and evidence and to kind of insert that in, or to make sure people aren't just talking to like-minded types.
Now, I have seen, though, that people have studied when you introduce data and evidence, it almost hardens the ideological or the dogmatic individual, especially, they talk about things like climate change. You can bring in people who are skeptical of it. The minute you introduce data or vaccines, they harden in their position and they refuse to address it.
You're completely right. So if we have an issue that is ideologically very inflamed, that once people hear data that conflicts with what they already thought, they either get their back up and start reacting, that has to be wrong because it's disturbing my deepest belief, or they think, why would they deny my belief if I weren't right?
So people are the worst. We're the worst.
Well,
So how do you, this seems like, so basically almost what you're saying is it is human nature to harden your position when you surround yourself by like-minded people, but people are drawn to like-minded individuals. So this seems to be some sort of perpetual emotion machine.
okay, here's a little story from the founding of the Constitution.
I love a nice story.
This is, when the Constitution was started, there was a proposal that was our First Amendment, something which would give constituents the right to instruct their representatives. And that constitutional amendment was defeated on the ground articulated by the early generation that we want diverse people in our Congress who are talking to each other and learning from one another, and the right to instruct would defeat the point of the meeting. So I think that's a profound lesson about how if you are thinking that your job is to listen to other people who are different from yourself, then you can break this little amplification machine we're describing. And we've seen it in American history, in the movement for sex equality, for example, in the environmental movement where President Nixon was actually a hero and President Reagan was the architect really of the Montreal Protocol, which preserved the ozone layer. That was data-driven and getting diverse people in the
You
room.
need one rebel in the group. You need somebody who has dogmatic credibility, ideological credibility, but who will stand on a principle beyond them. Is that the way to break the spell, the hex?
That's one way. Data can work if people aren't ideologically really invested, but if there's an isolated dissenter, sometimes that can reduce conformity pressures and get groupthink defeated.
Or we just keep people apart. That's the other thing. You keep people apart. You don't let people gather. They live in pods. People live in pods and they're fed through a tube. You know, you got to think, Cass. Solutions, my friend. Wiser. It's on the bookshelves now. Read it alone. Cass Sunstein.